Sandra, is Jimmy still working, like doing construction, or not really?
He's in school right
Oh,
now
he's in
for his
school.
last.
Sorry.
He's in school for his last session right now. So,
Mm-hmm.
so he was on EI before this happened. He's on EI till mid-May. It's
Mm-hmm.
called training EI. When they go into
Oh, okay, I see.
their apprenticeship training, when they have to do
Mm-hmm.
the 8-week courses,
Mm-hmm.
it's there's technically laid off from their company, so they can collect while they're in school.
Okay, cool.
So it just kind of worked out good, but he's classified as essential service. So
Oh, I see.
yeah.
When's he done school?
End of May now.
Oh, end of May. Okay. I'm
Yeah.
assuming he's doing online, right?
Yeah, so his course was in person, but now it got switched to online.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, everybody, we're gonna get going here. So I'm Sandra. I'm one of the coaches at East Woodbridge. Sometimes you guys might see me out in Markham doing some coaching or judging. So what we're gonna be talking about is a little bit about competing or wanting to compete. How do you get your stepping stone into that? Or even, I think people think when we say competing, we're only talking about like this elite level, like games level, sanctional people. We're not talking just that. We're talking about just like, just competing in local comps as well. Okay. And so Chris is here, so that's good too, because I want him to jump on some stuff with us. And then Alex as well competes. So you're going to kind of see, we're going to kind of all jump through this a little bit. So a background on my story is I've been doing CrossFit for 6 years now, but I had a background in fitness, so it crossed over well for me. Essentially, I started at a gym in North Bay. Right away, was lifting pretty good weights, but didn't quite have the coaching or the guidance I needed. Moved down south here for some work opportunities, ended up working out of what's called CrossFit Bolton. It was a good change, and I actually was doing Invictus program there without knowing I was doing Invictus programming. And then I got an opportunity to do a competition, and I met Sasha, one of the former members at CrossFit East Woodbridge and coaches. When I met Sasha, she told me about her coach. I signed up with her coach, and then it ended up leading me into joining their team. So the East Woodbridge team. And from there, I essentially moved gyms almost like within like 6 months of joining the team. And Chris didn't even know I was a coach. So then I ended up coaching at the gym, and I've never left since, even though I live quite far from the gym.
You live quite far from everything, so that's not fair to say. Okay.
Yeah. So the thing about competing and how do you do this with a lifestyle, because the vast majority of us who do compete cannot live solely on the income from competing, if any income. If like Chris will tell you, any income we've ever earned at any competition goes directly into, paying for pretty much our registration fees. So, or
it's for the love, it's not for money.
Yeah, we don't really do this for money. I would say only the top 0.001% is doing this for money. We're talking like maybe the top 10 athletes, because they'll even break it down by how much money they make per year at the games. And I think like the top 10 athletes, so the 10th from the bottom, I think maybe made $20,000. But you got to think about all that money they put in to get to where they were. So just to make the 20,000, they probably didn't really make money. Okay. So the love of CrossFit and competing really has to come from a good mental place. If you're competing for the wrong reasons, you will not enjoy this process at all. Chris has been doing this for like 11 years now, Chris?
I don't even know. Steve, how many years have I been doing this? 10? I'm sorry, 11? 12? 11th year, 2008, 2009 is when I started.
Yeah, and Chris is a good example of his of the mental state of being in the sport for so long. Is Chris just loves to train. He doesn't really he's like, competition's fun. It is fun. We love going to compete, but he naturally just loves to train. And I very much have followed suit in that, where it's like, we are more competitive in our training than at competition sometimes.
Yeah.
Uh,
But you beat me now, so it doesn't matter. Okay.
so
doesn't bother me at all.
Chris will tell you this funny story is I first joined the team and I was really ill our first training session. Like I had a chest, probably had COVID or something back in the day. Who knows what it was?
Okay. It was second. I think it was this first or second? First or second? If we're talking about
I think it was our first training session with Chris. And he turned to the team there after I left and was like, why are we taking this girl? He did not understand about me being on the team. But my coach at the time, like really, really encouraged them. And I just went to work. I'm a workhorse. That's all it is. I've always been a workhorse, and I'm not afraid to work on my weaknesses. Like I'm very much like, you know, instead of doing a heavy lift in a workout, I'll put handstand push-ups in the workout because I know that's a weakness of mine. So I'm really not scared of working on those weaknesses or putting in the work towards them. And I made quite a bit of gains once I switched over to being on the team, like dramatic improvements, I would say. And that was just because I was around now people who competed at a high level. And so I was getting my ass kicked every day. Like the scores, like everybody would smash me. Even Rob would beat me. Coach Rob would be beating me and stuff. So one of the best things you can do for yourself is if you are wanting to compete or try to make yourself a little bit better, is to start working out with people who are better with you than you. And I know that can sometimes be hard because, you know, it's a little bit of an ego thing where you get your ass handed to you. But honestly, it should drive you to get better. You should be picking up on what those people are doing in the workouts. How are they managing their pace? What are they doing for accessory work? And then you should be inspired to continue to do that. So I know we're fairly good at getting actually our members to jump in on workouts with us. I do at least once a week on Saturdays. I kind of have a gang that kind of works out with me. And we're talking all ages. We're talking from a 16-year-old boy up to some of my older guys are closer to 55. And yes, we do scale the workouts accordingly, but the whole idea is that they're still getting the fitness benefit from it. But there's a lot of stuff that goes into competing at a high level. To give you guys an idea, currently right now, just because I don't know what's going on with the CrossFit Games, I don't know what's going on with sanctionals. I kind of wanted to do a certain sanctional, but not sure if it's going to happen. I am still training twice a day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursdays, I do a run or cardio. Friday, I train twice a day. Saturday, I train once a day. And then Sundays, I don't train. So that's essentially my schedule right now. I get up in the morning. The first thing you have to be very selfish if you're going to be at this level. And luckily enough, I have a pretty understanding husband. I know Steve and Chris have very understanding wives as well. That we are very selfish. And it's, you have to be because you have to centralize everything around your training, and that includes your work day as well too. So yes, my work is number one, but in the back of my mind, my next thing I'm thinking about is everything I have to do to get my training in and get quality training in while also recovering. So right now, people will still laugh. Rob jokes about this all the time. I'm still going to bed at 8:30 at night, even though I don't have to get up for anything. The nice part about going to 8:30 at night, I'm sleeping in till 7:30. So people are like laughing. They're like, you're getting 10 to 12 hours of sleep a night. It's like, yeah. And I'm training 4 to 5 hours a day. It's known, Brandon's posted a study that the more sleep you can get with recovery, you have a natural boost in your human growth hormone. Okay. So there's a lot of benefits to recovering properly. And I don't get to sleep like that when I'm working full time, even though I'm still going to bed at 8:30. So currently I get to train at about 9 a.m. in the morning. So I train from 9 to 11 in the morning. My schedule is set up for 2-a-day training sessions. So it's not that I don't create my own schedule. I'm programmed by CrossFit Invictus. That's who I follow. I love, like, I follow them to a T. I really don't defer from them. I'm pretty good that way. So I follow what my coach gives me. And then in the afternoon, most days, most of you guys who are on here will see me. I almost do the mobility session every day. I think that's one of the best things we have going, just because I know that's a weakness of mine and it forces me to do it. And then after that mobility session, I tend to go hit my next session of the day, or I might wait till closer to 4 o'clock to hit my next session. Typically, my second session of the day is my longer session, aka strength session and intense session with WODs, just because you need to have more fuel and meals into you. So it's funny, as I'm speaking, I'm eating one of my lunches, and yeah, I'm eating out Tupperware, because if you don't meal prep and you're not organized, like, that's something that takes time out of my day. So even right now, even though I have all the time in the world to make a meal, that's still taking out of my day that I could aka be training or doing work. So it's easier for me on Sundays to still meal prep my lunch meal so I can focus on other priorities during the day. And I think in general, everybody should be meal prepping. It saves you a lot of money. You're going to eat healthier, and then you're just going to have more time. So that's something like I highly push on everybody, is that they should be meal prepping, because I work as a teacher, I see a lot of people go out for lunch every day, and it costs a lot of money to go out for lunch every day. And right now you can't. And typically, if you're eating out, you're probably not eating healthy. So my training when I'm actually working, a lot of people don't know this. Some of the members will know this. Like Nancy sees me in the morning. There's certain days I have to train at 5:30 in the morning, and I'm at the gym at 5:30 in the morning, and then I have to travel down to Woodbridge to work. And then after I work, I travel right back to the gym to train some more and to train some clients. I am lucky enough to be able to train at home. So people are like, oh, you have all the equipment at home. Yeah, it's great. It's cool. There's sacrifices there. So give you guys an idea, like, I haven't gone on a vacation since my honeymoon because, gym equipment's not cheap. So you kind of have to make, like, what are your priorities in life? What do you want? Do you want gym equipment so you can train at home every day? Or do you want to go on a vacation that only lasts a week? What's your goals, right? So I think people think they're like, oh, if I had all the time in the world, if I had all this stuff, like, I'd make it happen. But no, because if you're going to train competitively and be at that elite, you're going to make some really tough choices that people aren't going to understand. They're going to be like, why are you getting up at 5:30 in the morning? Or, like, for example, when you go north, like when I go north to visit my in-laws, they're like, why do you have to go to the gym on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. to train? And it's like, well, because if I don't go on and do that session, it probably means I'm not committed enough to actually wanting to go to a sanctional or the CrossFit Games. And that's just why. And people are like, they're all amazed when you go places. They're like, oh, that's so cool. Like, you're going to Brazil to complete. That's awesome. But they don't always get what you have to put in to get to that point. They're like, but why do you have to train on Saturday morning? Well, I don't get to go to Brazil just half-assing it. And so people have to understand that. And there's, like, a lot of choices, a lot of social choices, like, I will make, sometimes if I go to parties, I won't stay A, late because of my sleep schedule. B, I don't drink too often. I probably drank more now within the quarantine, but I still very much do limit my alcohol intake because it is very hard to be training and drinking alcohol because like drinking as in, I mean, like partying drinking, like our socials, not just having like a casual glass of wine at night. Okay. So there's a lot of sacrifices you have to make, a lot of like social sacrifices you have to make with people. And so one of the things I've always done in the last 4 years with my job is I have a workout club at school with my kids and my teaching friends a lot of times. So I kind of have a little crew that, you know, they just want to work on a little bit of fitness, but they don't understand what that actually means to me, because I just set days and it forces me to get up. It forces me to work. I typically ask some grade 12 boys on the track team to join my workout club, just so I can work on my running skills. So typically they smoke me in running. So I'll even program workouts that are more advantageous in their favor. So it forces me to get up to their level. So I'm always thinking about how I can get better, how I have to improve. And that's where I really talk about the being very selfish. And even though people will probably just tell you, like, she's not a very selfish person, she's very nice, she's very lovely, she does a lot of hard work for people. Yes, but I'm very organized and able to do that. But I'm very selfish in the sense of I have made my training a priority the last couple of years. So what I'm going to have probably is Chris maybe talk a little bit about his training too, and maybe his ideas about competing.
You want me to answer just in general, or you want me to wait for someone to ask a question?
No, I want you to answer, like, what do you think about competing? What about what you've done in your lifestyle?
I think, I think you touched on every point. Like as you're talking about it, I'm thinking about like, why do I keep doing it? Or, you look at it, yeah, you have to sacrifice and all this and that. And yeah, you do. But I think you just have to come to terms with what you want and what you have to do. You know what I mean? It's really that simple. It's like, well, if I want to go here, I have to do that. And that's it. Yes, you're sacrificing a lot of things, but I think you're gaining so much more. So I don't look at all the things that I'm missing out on. I'm looking at all the things that I'm gaining from this. And it's just, this exercise thing mimics real life, where the more you sacrifice in life, to stay focused, the more you're going to get. Right. And the rewards outweigh any sacrifice 10 times fold. Right. After any competition that, like say going to Brazil, or when you guys came third at regionals, I don't know many things, unless like for me, unless my children were born, like those are like peaks of my life. You know what I mean? And there's so many cool, fun things I did when I was young, and drinking and partying, being with my friends. Like I did that for a long, long time. And I could incorporate all 15 years of me drinking and partying and would never come close to any of the big experiences I had where I had to sacrifice a lot, right? And we know that the more we sacrifice and the more we have to go through, you know what I mean? Like all the ups and downs and all that hard work, that's where the real growth happens. And that's, you have to go through that to realize like, yeah, this is why I'm going to continue to do it. Like, it sounds like, oh, you're, you might be psycho, like you're 2 hours a day and you're not, going on vacations because you want gym equipment, right? To the regular person, they're like, well, what a fucking loser, blah, blah, blah. Like, why would they do that, right? She's got problems. Like, no, that's just another level of commitment that people just don't understand, right? And that's what it takes to make it to where you want to be, right? It's that commitment. And then people don't understand that commitment is what it takes. It's like when you talk about, say like Rich Froning or anybody who's, at the top of their sport. I'm trying to think of the quarterback guy. I'm drawing a blank right now. Like the 40-year-old guy. What's his name?
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady. There it is. Like they think he's a friggin' fanatic, right? It's just like, no, that's just another level of commitment that you don't, like the regular person doesn't understand, right? And those principles are what it takes to be the best. Like you need to be out there. You need to be doing exactly what other people are not willing to do to separate yourself from them, right? And it really becomes a no-brainer. And the more we hear it, it's like, yeah, like it's not like, if you want to be like everyone else, just do what everyone else is doing. You're not going to miss out, and you're going to be able to connect with them and be happy with them and whatever. But if you want more, you cannot be like everybody else. And in my opinion, it's a choice. But I know that every time I do something where a big, huge amount of commitment is required is when I grow the most, and those experiences are going down that are like untouchable. For me, it started when I did Thai boxing, right? And I remember when we went to go compete in World Cup Bangkok in Thailand, And there were so many crazy, crazy experiences that I had there. And I was in my early 20s, and I had aha moments where I was like, my friends will never understand this. I can't explain to them the experiences and the things that I've gone through and that I saw, because they will never get it. You know what I mean? Even if you tell them the stories, they're still not going to grasp the ideas or the concept of what I'm trying to talk to people. The only people that I could explain it to were the people that were on Team Canada and that were there, because we've all been through the same thing. So I think it's just the same principles of success, whether it's CrossFit, sport, or successful in business, or being successful with your family and being happy. You just need to be able to put in that much effort and stay focused. So with that
Yeah, I
focus,
think you bring up
good things come.
a really good point about like the experiences. Like, even though like we'll be at events like competing, we get some free time. Those are probably like the funnest times I've had, like, you know, just going out to our Texas barbecue places, shopping Target, sharing rooms with Brandon, Chris sharing room with Rob. Those have been some of the most fun experiences, and opportunities I've had. So I love competing. I love that atmosphere. Like, I'm only nervous for a second before I go on the floor, because again, you're only going to do what you're capable of in CrossFit. So I'm not going to go out to the floor and do a max 300-foot handstand walk if I've never done that in practice. So you already have an expectation of what you can do, and you should know what you can do. So you're only ever really, you're competing against someone else, but you're really only competing against yourself and what work you put into this. I'm going to have Alex talk next. Alex has done a bunch of sanctionals, qualified for a bunch of sanctionals this year, the Canada West, which has now been canceled or postponed?
Postponed, unfortunately.
Okay.
So you want me to talk about like how I got into competing, Sandra?
Yeah. How you get into competing? Because you have a very interesting your first couple of years. So
Yeah. So like a little bit about me was like, to be honest, like growing up, I had like no sports background. I was actually like a really overweight kid. I think Chris can vouch for me on that one. When I was young, I had no sports background. I was really overweight, really chubby, knew nothing. I was like, the only sports I played growing up was like basketball and like soccer, but it was very house league. But like, again, like I was super overweight, no motivation to do anything. So then like when I lost all my weight, my brother and Steve go like way back since like elementary school. And my brother joined CrossFit, and he did CrossFit for like 4 or 5 months after I did my first class. And he was telling me about all these movements he was doing and like X, Y, and Z. And he got me to join it. And then after my first class, like I've been hooked like ever since. So 8 months go by in the CrossFit, and like Steve actually told me about like a competition. And I didn't know and this is back in like 2012. Yeah, like 2012. Yeah, 2012. And he told me about like a CrossFit competition. And I didn't know CrossFit had comps, because I thought CrossFit was just like good life, but different. Like you work out for an hour. It's just like a way just to be healthy and move. So after my first comp, I remember like I was super sore. I was legit destroyed. Like I couldn't feel my body the next day. And then like I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. And then but having my brother by my side, like he forced me to like push myself and get better. It's exactly what Sandra said. You're training with someone who's better. And like my brother was always better. So like training with him, he motivated me to get better and better all the time. So after my first comp, like I just did a bunch of more comps, and actually like I qualified. Like I did a team competition in like 2013, and I qualified for CrossFit Games as a teenager back in 2013. I placed like 4th worldwide, like as a team, and after that, like I was just so motivated to get after my first year of the games. It was always my motivation to go back into like the games one day. So that's always been like my drive and like my passion to go back. So fast forward now, sorry, and then like during the middle of it, like I kind of stopped doing CrossFit because I want to get better at other sports. Like I did weightlifting for a few years. I was actually on the provincial team for Ontario and Canada for 2 years, 3 years, and then eventually I kind of just stepped aside, and then now I'm doing CrossFit like competitively now. But as of now, I'm just training at home.
Training at home.
Just training at home, just trying to be fit. I'm just trying to work with what I have with equipment wise, and that's pretty much it. Because my big comps got canceled this year, so they got postponed this year, but we don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, and that's kind of my idea. So going off Alex's thing is, so this is my theory behind this all. This is where I'm trying to scam from, and even though I don't think it's gonna happen, so I want to do Granite Games qualifiers, and so I'm training really, really, really hard because I'm like, what if for some mysterious reason this virus just goes, and I could go to the Granite Games, and I do have a good enough score that I could place high enough, and then I qualify through a sanctional event for the games. So I know it sounds like a crazy theory, but it's not a bad theory.
It doesn't sound, I'm sorry, but I think like that's the kind of attitude you have to have when you want to, you know, again, separate yourself, right? Like you're willing to do things where other people will be like, you know what, my life has been disrupted. Poor me. I'm going to just sit home and stay fat and not fucking care. When life goes back to normal, then I'm going to get back into it. When you're like, I'm going to keep going as hard as I can. I'm going to control what I can control. Mm-hmm. And while these other people who say might have been better than you, then, you know, because everything was like perfect for their life, their lifestyle like fit them, that they could train twice a day, no disruption, get proper rest, blah, blah, blah. And now you're catching up to them. You're going to get some mileage. And, you know, every day they're not training and one day you are, is you're catching up closer and closer and closer. If this goes long enough, you're going to see, I think, a big disruption of people who are going to be beating other people just because they weren't, obviously they're physically fitter, but that's not the real reason why you guys are getting better. It's because you're mentally fitter. You know what I mean? It goes to show like if you can stay mentally tough, this is the time to get ahead of people. You know what I mean? And if your goals are truly what they are and you really are willing to do what it takes, that's what it takes. You know what I mean? Where other people, it's just that, again, yes, they're training hard, but if they live an easier lifestyle where they're not really, you know, there's, you know, people in the US, there's a lot of guys who, they're full-time CrossFitters, right? They're not working, but if their life's been disrupted, that because they have less things going on and they're just focusing on CrossFit, where you're worried about teaching, now I work over here, now I move over there, blah, 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 and your life's always being disrupted. It's just another day. You know what I mean? Where these people might be like, oh my God, my world's ending and I'm not going to do anything about it. Right? I think having that attitude is a winner's attitude. And if it doesn't happen this year, it's going to happen the next year or the next year, because by you keeping a positive attitude and working and doing everything you can control, you're going to catch it. It's just a matter of time. You know what I mean? Not if, I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good point to bring up is, I have a very positive outlook on my training. My training doesn't stress me out. If it stressed me out and I didn't like it, why the hell would I do this shit? I wouldn't. And that's why you see a lot of people like get into CrossFit and they get good and they get like really addicted, but they're not in a mental place that's good enough. And then all of a sudden one day they're like, I fucking hate CrossFit. I don't ever want to do it again. I never want to touch it. And it's like, well, you fell in love with competing and doing CrossFit for the wrong reason. You have to just love fitness in general, number one, before it becomes a competitive thing for you. So if you're going in this just to compete, not because you love the foundation of the sport, then you're doing it wrong. I think that's important. I'm going to bring up someone else. I'm going to bring up Rob, because his perspective is more, you know, he's more a regular member. Let's say this, he's a coach, but he likes to do competitions as well. So, because that's important, because there's a lot of people that are just going to be regular members who just wants to compete. And I think that's important to note on, because we're not all elite athletes or have the time, or that's not our goals, right? We have other priorities in life, and we should just be competing to have fun. It's just a sport. It's like going to play a basketball game. And to just notice that, oh, you know, now I need to shift my goals to maybe focus on volume toes to bar, because I noticed that was a weakness in my competition. So Rob, I'm going to pass it over to you and your experiences.
All right, thanks, Sandra. So I want to come back to a question I have for you and Chris that I kind of want to end with, at least end my part with. But yeah, I think CrossFit is a unique thing like as far as sports go, where outside of like post high school, you can be non-elite and very competitive, which is super rare now. I don't know many 30-year-olds that are competing in anything that aren't insanely good. And really, like, I don't know any 30-year-olds competing in anything outside of CrossFit at this point. It's not like you're on a really, really good hockey team that's like super fired up about hockey, unless you're, you know, like literally playing the NHL, AHL, WHL, something like that. And maybe you see it on the women's side where they're like a lot of sports are semi-professional, where you still have like a regular day job, but you know, you're playing for, I think it was like the Toronto Fury or whatever. But CrossFit allows you to be less than like elite, not committing every aspect of your life, but also being able to like go onto a competition floor, experience a degree of what other people are experiencing. The coolest one for me was Granite Games, where like I was in what was called the intermediate division. So I was 2 divisions below Steve and Chris's team, but all the events were like they were the same stimulus, but slightly different. So in a team of 3, I think one of the events they had to do 70 muscle ups as a team, whereas like our division had to do 50 muscle ups, and then the division below us was like 50 chest to bar and 10 muscle ups or something like that. But it allowed you to feel very similar to what they're doing. We're on the same competition floor. Like some of the events were the same day, some of them were the day after. It was cool because like there was an obstacle course, and I think it was like maybe the obstacle course we did first, and we're like, hey, you got to do this, like you got to do that. Chris will tell you about his obstacle course racing experience. How he's so good at them. And then other times like they would give us advice, and then there was like a couple of times where we got like super pissed at him. I remember one of the events is like, oh yeah, like we should have told you guys that you're supposed to switch like the sides on the deadlifts if you're doing like 100 reps at a heavy weight, because one of your one backside will like completely blow up. So there was some stuff like that, but we ended up like, cause they had like all this experience in the same exact sport, it was able to directly filter down to us. And I had like, you get levels of understanding of what people are putting in, right? Like they were at a different level. Like the guys next to them that were competing on the same floor, like I knew those guys' names from TV and like, or you know, YouTube or whatever, that were like competing at the games. Like you're sitting there like because of Invictus, like I'm sitting there, you know, getting ready for my event, and like Steve is just talking to Garrett Fisher or something like that. I'm like, oh, that guy, I know who that guy is. Like I've watched him in the games like 5 years ago. And so it's really cool. And I don't think there's any other sport that allows you to have that kind of crossover. Like it doesn't matter how good you are at hockey. Like you're not sitting next to Sidney Crosby and like he's telling you like, oh, you know, for this next event, like I decided to do this. So that does allow you to get a similar feeling. And I think you get kind of like what you put into it. So I know that like Chris qualifying, because it was a higher level, like had put so much more work in over the last decade than I had. It's not that I hadn't put a lot of work in. Like I spent a ton of time working, but it wasn't the same degree that Chris had. So he would have a higher level of satisfaction than I would because of what you get. But you still like are very aware of that. And I think the more aware people can be, and I was kind of saying this on the last call that we did, the more honest you can be about that, the better and happier you're going to be. If you have a view, like I think it's super, super healthy for me to have a view that Chris is better than me because he wants it more and he works harder than me. I think it's very important to look at things that way because it maintains control. If I start giving excuses like, oh, Chris is better than me because he's more experienced, he's stronger, like he did powerlifting before, like he had a sporting background. Yeah, like it factors in, and for sure there's some degree, but you know, you also have to give him credit for all those things that he did as well. And if you just say like, oh, well, like he's got good genetics or he's just better than me, so that's why he's like doing it, it's not healthy and doesn't lead to good places. So I try and keep that very like humble mindset of, okay, like I could be there if I really wanted it. Like if I decided that I was going to do what, you know, Sandra does, for example, and like work out twice a day and, you know, go to bed at 8. And I know I can handle I can work out, like working out isn't hard. And no one that's into CrossFit has trouble working out. Like that's not the issue for any person. It's doing all the other shit that comes along with it that allows you to work out more. And if you don't do that other stuff, I know if I'm basically like if my nutrition gets off a little bit, in a week or two, I start to feel it. If I'm not doing the stretching, if I'm not doing the rehab stuff, like I feel it I feel it a couple weeks later. It's like, okay, well, I didn't spend half an hour doing that kind of stuff that I needed to do. But I do want to like kind of end this with not again my part with a question for Chris, Sandra, like anybody else that wants to jump in. So we all kind of know that the more work we put in, the more satisfaction we're going to have. The more sacrifices we make, the more in the long run, we're going to look back and be like, I'm so happy I made that sacrifice. I think the list is 2 people on the planet right now, Tia Toomey and Matt Frazier, that have completely committed to like being the best they could possibly be. And everyone else is degrees of that. Why do you think psychologically there's so many of us that know that we would have a higher level of satisfaction if we sacrifice more, that still don't do it? So, and like, I don't have a great, like, I think there's some excuses involved and I think there's some fears involved, but I'm just curious what you guys think about that, knowing that like you're saying if you sacrifice more, you'd get more. And yet we also all know there's more we could individually do. So what do you guys think about that? It's kind of like a hard question, but it's a one we might as well think about.
Yeah. So for me, I know it would like, I would have to be getting close to like top 10 in the world to even ever think about leaving my teaching job. Because yes, my CrossFit career could be maybe 5 years long, 2 years long. Like I don't know. Like you could get an injury, then you're making no money. Right now I have a great job. I love my job. I love teaching. I love my high school students. And I get a lot of satisfaction out of my job, and it creates a good balance in my life that drives me in my workouts. Yes, sometimes it takes away from how much training I can do, but for me, it actually helps with my training. Chris?
I think, again, now that I'm an older athlete and I've been competing, blah, 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 I wasn't committed enough. As much as I'm committed more than the average person, 100%. My goal in my like when I was like, say, in my prime, was to prove that, listen, I don't need to be a full-time athlete. I can be, a full-time, I was in school, I was in university, I was a manager at a CrossFit gym, at a regular fitness gym, and I owned CrossFit Markham at the time. And I partied hard on weekends. Okay, like hard, like religiously, like bottle service every single weekend. And I was running on tops, 6 hours sleep for a good 4 or 5 years. And I'm like, I'm going to prove everybody wrong. And I didn't. I was doing a lot of everything, you know what I mean? Like I was winning on that spectrum where I was doing more than the average CrossFitter, and doing very well. But I wasn't focused enough, you know what I mean? And the reality is though, is that, now that I look back, I wasn't willing to do what it took because I wasn't willing to give up all the other things that I was building in my life, right? My family and friends are really important to me. My social life was at that time so important to me, and I completely don't regret that because, like, again, obviously during that period of my life, that was some of the best times of my life. Obviously now I'm older. There's different good times, but I wanted to have my cake and eat it too. But I look back, it's like I wasn't, as bad as I wanted to make the games, I wasn't willing to do what it took because I still wanted everything else as well. I wasn't willing to sacrifice everything, and that's why I didn't make it to the games, I think, in my opinion, because I'd come top 7 to top 10 every year. But I don't regret it because I had so many good things, and I built a business because of it, because I knew there was always a certain lifestyle I wanted, and I knew that I personally wasn't willing to give it up. It was the same thing when I got to fight. My goal in life was for about 10 years, was to be a professional fighter. And then once I finally got to fight, like I fought on pay-per-view, it was my like pinnacle, right? And I fought with guys who fought in K1 and blah, 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 and all these cool things. And I was collecting my money at the end of the night, and I was watching these guys who fought in the main event, and another guy fought in the UFC, and I saw what they were making. I'm like, oh my God, this is it? These guys are fucking poor. Like, this is like, yeah, it means a lot. It's sentimental, but I knew that I have a certain lifestyle I want to obtain. And if I don't do what I have to do now, I'm going to be kicking myself in the ass for it, 10 years from now. And that's why I chose not to go all in. You know what I mean? I went all in as much as I was willing to commit, but I know 100% the reason why I didn't make it. And I don't look back and regret it. I controlled what I controlled. I'm happy with everything because, again, I think I have a lot more outside of CrossFit than a lot of CrossFitters who give up everything. And again, there's no right or wrong. That's a personal thing. But for me, I think I made the right decision. Like, I have zero regrets.
Yeah, you just don't want to end up being like, yeah, I gave it all, and I never was the best in the world, but I made $20,000 a year 5 years later, but now I have nothing to really fall back on. And it's like, that's the hard part about sometimes CrossFit, because we do get into it. It is a later sport. Again, as teenagers, you should be playing sports. I really, really play sports. CrossFit's just kind of like a supplementary to playing sports and being athletic. And then CrossFit it's more a later life. You kind of need money to do CrossFit. So it's a later life sport that we noticed. But we are getting close to the time. So what I want to do at this point, though, is I want to know if anybody has questions or comments that any of us can answer. So feel free to ask anybody for these questions.
Sandra, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I guess this is more specifically for you. I'm also a teacher. I'm also doing my MEd right now. And one of the things that I have a lot of trouble with is, I guess, responding to strangers, because, well, first thing is responding to strangers who are just sort of hating on your lifestyle. And ignoring only does so much, but it's just something that consistently happens. So I'm sort of wondering, how do you respond to these people that are just hating on what you're doing, but also making it a educational opportunity at the same time? Is it worth it to do that? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it depends. I'm in a new school this year. I don't really talk about my CrossFit stuff at my new school at all. A couple of them looked me up who have done CrossFit before, and they're like, oh my God, you're like actually like kind of famous. And I was like, no, like, and so like, they're kind of funny. They're like, oh, you're like a celebrity, and which is, it's cute. But I really don't talk about my CrossFit stuff much. If anything, I don't even call it CrossFit, the training I do at school. I just call it functional. Again, I don't believe in my high school kids. The worst thing I could do is try to teach them to squat snatch with a barbell. That'd be the worst thing I could do. It takes too long. It takes a lot of coaching. That's fine. I can do a lot of simple exercises that get a lot of fitness gains. So personally, I don't talk about my CrossFit lifestyle too much at school. My kids know I compete and stuff, but they don't know. And I don't let it get out too much on the level, because, and I know there's a lot of parents on here, but guys, not everybody's nice parents. Not everybody's nice. Some parents will be like, well, this teacher is just going off and competing. It's like, no, when I go to compete, I don't get paid, guys. Like they take money off my salary when I don't go to work to compete. So that's a sacrifice I make in my life. So, and again, I'm only granted 2 days. I'm only allowed 2 days a year in my teaching to take off. So, and I do that. And so I can never get in trouble. And yeah, sure. I can think of one person right now who's a hater, but you know, they're an overweight teacher that teaches fitness class my age, and the kids don't respect them. So in the end, it really comes down to like, how do the kids perceive you? Like the kids look at me and they're like the grade 12 boys are always walking around like, Miss, am I bigger than you yet? Am I bigger than you? Like I have the respect of my high school kids. That other teacher who doesn't like what I do, well, they don't, but that's just their personality in general, if they're going to be a negative person. So I say like, hell to them, like just ignore them, like, and let them know you don't really appreciate it, right? You know, I'm like, I don't really agree with what you're saying, but let's see what happens in the end.
To be honest, Jess, like, sorry, I'll vouch for you on that one, because like I have a lot of friends that like rip on me all the time. They think like what I do is silly. They think what I do is like dangerous, but straight up I told them like, if you like it and love it, that's all that matters. Like I just ignore them. I'll be like, sometimes I make fun of them. Like I'll be like, oh, you're not squatting deep enough. Like how, like that sucks. Or like when you press, you're arching your back a lot. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and then when they see us grow and progress and how much weight we can push, they always ask me, like, can you train me? I'm like, oh wait, you're making fun of me, so you can screw off or something like that. So you kind of have to give a little bit like shit back to them. Like I don't really care if my friends say anything about that, but like you gotta shoot the shit with them sometimes.
Yeah, one other thing I'd add is Like I kind of like looking into people that are like have a certain type, like personality type, and it doesn't matter if it's like fitness related or not. When you look at like kind of look at the person, like what they're like, what they do out, if they have a job, if they have multiple jobs, I do think there's like a lot of people that, you know, are very insecure about what they're doing with themselves, and their natural thing is to like it's the crabs in the bucket thing. Like they're going to pull you down because they don't want to go up. But you find like when I talk to people, the people that like I know a bunch of people that work 70-hour work weeks in very different fields, like everything from like guys that own construction companies to like, you know, tons of different stuff in different businesses, and then different like athletes in wildly different sports. And the people that are like really invested in other things get it. Like it doesn't matter what it is. If they're like, yeah, like it's fucking sick that you do that stuff, that you're like out there trying to make yourself better, or that you're like putting in extra work, or that you're like kind of obsessive about it. Those people like all get it. There's a couple I've talked to that'll like kind of, and there's difference between like ripping on you about like classic CrossFit jokes, which like I'm all for, and I'll make fun of other people for like for their stuff kind of thing, and like a weird like trying to pull you down and make you like not feel as good about yourself. And yeah, it's true that there's just certain people where you're like, they get it, like because they understand like what Chris was talking about like making short-term sacrifices for long-term gains. And I think just like having a perspective of who it is that's saying stuff to you really matters, because sometimes people are going to give you like hard-hitting advice you don't want to hear, and like they don't deliver it very well, and it's super important that you listen to them. Like it may suck and they may be completely right, but you have to look at like, well, what does this person know? And it's like, okay, this dude's a lawyer who spent the last 10 years of his life building up his practice, and he knows what it's like to sacrifice something, like sacrifice his family, sacrifice his friends. And if he's saying like, you know, back off a little bit, like you maybe should listen to that guy, you know, like, because he might know what he's talking about. Whereas when you talk to somebody that's, I'm gonna shit on Sandra a little bit here, but you have certain people that like kind of fall into, especially like I say, government jobs, where they're like, they got the job at 21, they know they're gonna have that job for 20 years, and like they're gonna just keep getting their like incremental pay raises, and they're just gonna like go on their 2 vacations a year, and like it's just all like a very pre-planned life. And I have friends that are like joking that are 2 years into like being like a lineman that are like, oh well, what are you gonna do when you retire? And like, I'm gonna golf all the time. It's like they don't get it. Like they have no understanding of what it is that people are trying to do. And you just need to be around people that do get it. It doesn't matter what it is. Someone that's obsessive about something else is more relatable to Sandra than someone that's pretty into CrossFit. Like it's just because they understand like, okay, I'm going to bed at 8:30 and waking up at 5 a.m. so that I can get what I want out of life. So I look at it that way instead of trying to look at things like they squat and snatch.
Yeah, 100%. I'm like a lot of people like I very much admire are just very passionate or about what they do, or even teachers that I really much admire are like just super passionate about the courses they teach, and they do a lot of stuff outside of the school, like evolved around what they teach or just their love. And like they don't have to have the same interest as me to be my best friend at all. That's not something I do. Just really like hard working people. That's really what it comes down to. Like, I'm not telling everybody to go do CrossFit. I'm the last person. Like I don't shove that down people's throat. CrossFit is what works for me, is what I love to do. But as long as people are moving or doing stuff they love, then that's the thing. Okay, I got a question here. What's the science behind genetics and performance? Because let's face it, even if I trained like Sandra, I truly don't think I would have the muscle mass strength to hit her numbers. And obviously that's okay. And it's not a goal for me, but sometimes it gets in my head. I'm training hard and not seeing results like others. So for that question is, yeah, there is a little bit of genetics and some training history. So as Alex talked, Alex didn't really have an athletic background. I, on the other hand, had a very athletic background. I grew up playing sports all my life, everything. I was athlete of the year of my elementary school, my middle school, my high school. I was athletic president. I went to Western. I played on the women's football team that was tackling. And then I became a fitness instructor when I was in university. So in 2009, and then right in 2009, I learned how to deadlift and back squat. So I've been deadlifting and back squatting for now 12 years heavy. So like when I started CrossFit, like the funny part was they're like, okay, you're going to test your 1 rep max deadlift. I was like, cool, 305. I'm like, is that good? Like, is 305 good? They're like, oh, like, yeah, that's pretty good. And then CrossFit got me onto a program, essentially a strength program, which I never really was on because I was just always doing 8 reps of everything, right? And so once a program came on, like my deadlift's up to 425 now. So if you look at where you started and where you end off at, you're probably at the same percentages at me, just based on where you started in your level. So yeah, my strength is strength. We talk about that a lot. Like, I'm very, very strong, okay? But my cardio lacks, and I have to put a lot of work into my cardio. Like, we're talking hours a week of just sitting on the rower, doing rowing intervals, going to the track, running intervals. Like, I spend hours a week just doing cardio, just to like get to a higher level. I'm still wouldn't even say my cardio is at a great elite level, okay? Just pure cardio. I'm good in WODs, but I have to just basic cardio. I really have to work on. So in saying that, yes, genetics play a difference. Yes, for sure. They do. My background plays a huge difference. I played athletic sports all my life. So I've always been essentially training my body. My strength is strength. Maybe someone else's strength is cardio. So now they have to put the work in to do those numbers. And again, when you look at my numbers for my strength, I'm at like Rob will tell you guys, like Sandra would have placed top 5 at the CrossFit Games on the 3 lifts, okay, without training. But again, if it came down to a running event, I wouldn't. So your focus might be like, you might be amazing cardio athlete. You might smash the cardio. So you just have to focus on strength, but don't compare yourself always to me, because where I'm at my strength is the top in the world essentially. But that's part of my genetic history, my genetic makeup. So, okay, got it. I was like a geek 6 years ago, and true often I forget that is where I started, which is key. Yeah, it's just, it's about where you started. And like, so for me, it helped me excel in the sport just because when I started, I was so strong right away. It was like, oh, I could do the weights. I could RX workouts right away. But again, my cardio lacked. So that's what.
Yeah, I would also add, like, there's got like kind of a 2-part answer, and like the first more important part of the answer is you can't affect your genetics, so don't worry about it. Like, it's, you can use it as an excuse if you want, but it's not helpful. So just move on. Like, that's the simplest way to do it. Is just say, look, this is what I can control. I can control how I train, eat, sleep, and deal with my stress. And that's it. Like, those are the things you control. You can't control anything else. You can't control like the fact that you're not allowed to go to a gym right now. So being super stressed about not going to a gym is completely useless. So just move on from that. I also have and there's a few other people I've heard with this theory of like genetics. And I think like I have this theory that Matt Fraser is genetically an endurance athlete who spent 10 years working on weightlifting. Yeah, and the reason he never got really good at weightlifting is because he's not naturally a good genetic weightlifter. But like because of the fact that he was in a sport that was bad for him, 10 years later, it ended up being like the greatest thing that ever happened, because this thing that should have been a weakness that should have held him back in CrossFit is what he's absolutely amazing at, because he spent like 8 years in weightlifting as that was his only thing that he cared about. So now he came back, and in 2 years, he went from being like completely terrible at endurance events to just crushing the field at endurance events. So you can use it as like an excuse if you want, or you can use it as a motivator if you want, of like, okay, if I just crush this, I should be good at the other stuff. And it's like Alex is really going to talk about this too, because he's clearly like better at one thing, but it's a lot of the time it's because he was good at it, so he excelled, so he spent more time weightlifting. And it keeps it simple for him, at least. He's like, okay, what do I want to do, or what do I need to do to get better at CrossFit? Like, I need to run more. I need to work out for 30-minute WODs. I need to do WODs that are insanely uncomfortable, and I probably don't need to snatch and clean and jerk and hit PRs all the time, because I know against the field that I'm competing with, I'm pretty good there. Like, that's not where I'm going to lose points, and I'm not going to feel guilty if I don't do better on that. Whereas like, I know I need to run because running's going to come up and it's going to be a weaker event for me.
Yeah, exactly. I can touch.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Alex.
No, it's exactly what Rob said too. It's like, I know like what I need to work on, and like now is the time to work on it, right? Like during quarantine time, I do a lot of running now, and like no matter what, like when I compete in like these high level sanctional comps, and like I put in a lot of work in my running, And sometimes like I compete on the floor, and it's like the satisfaction of like you always finishing like near the bottom of a cardio event. Now you're finishing near like mid pack at the top, like the top of a cardio event is like rewarding because it just shows like how much hard work has paid off, right? Like
Yeah, like
it's
me
like,
beating Chris in handstand walking.
or it's like I like beat,
sometimes
or it's like, or it's like I beat like Rob in a rowing event, and I know Rob's a better rower than me, right? Just like the satisfaction of like putting the work in and getting like the results back is worth it. And yes, it takes time. It doesn't take like, it's not like I'm gonna practice rowing for 5 minutes once a week and then hope by next month I do a 1K row test and I'm hoping to beat my row, like beat Rob or beat my K test. No, it takes like 10 plus hours a week just to work on that one specific movement, either running, rowing, biking, weightlifting, gymnastics, etc. And go ahead,
I
Chris.
think tying back that whole question where, you know, yeah, you definitely want to be around better people to help push you harder, but not comparing yourself to that person, and knowing that, again, like Alex was saying, you know, I want to, you know, do better in a WOD against Rob, but I know after a month of training and I retest myself and then I see myself get better, even though it's incrementally, that's where the satisfaction comes in. And I think looking at, you know, genetics and comparing yourself to other people is the wrong thing. Control what you control. Don't look at yourself when it comes to Sandra. Like Sandra lifts like as heavy as me for clean and jerks. You know what I mean? It's not good for my ego, so I try not to think about that, because I do know there's a lot of strengths that I have that she doesn't, and that's the way it is. Like, you know, you have to realize that everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses, and because of Instagram, you're only seeing strengths. You know what I mean? Like you look at like Steve's lifts. I see his lifts posted. I'm like, oh my God, what I would do to do that, right? And I'm not going to post like a burpee workout because who wants to watch a burpee workout and be like, oh my God, those were sick burpees, bro. You know what I mean? But you just have to recognize your strengths and weaknesses, and that, you know, the good thing about CrossFit, it's not, you know, structured and this is the one thing you have to be good at. You have to be good at everything. So it's going to balance out at the end of the day, and you're going to have some strengths that I'm sure that Sandra will have a hard time keeping up with, you know what I mean? And just understanding that, right? Even though it might not look as sexy for the gram, but it's true. We all have our own strengths and weaknesses. Say you're small and you're short and you're not super strong, but I guarantee you're going to kill me on Cindy. You're going to kill me on Fran. It doesn't matter how good I am and how much I try. That's not going to be a strength of mine just because I'm a taller athlete, right? And it just respecting that, not stressing out about it. Just know you just keep on doing what you're doing to get better, right? And then to answer Nancy's question, Matt Fraser's parents were actually, Matt was born and raised in Richmond Hill until he was 10 or 11, I believe. And then he moved down south. I met his parents a bunch of times. They're from Richmond Hill. So is he, just that he would never say that he was born in Canada and that his parents are Canadian. But yeah, it was a cool
they're
thought or whatever.
skaters, right?
Yeah.
Is there any other questions, guys? Just because we'll have to probably start wrapping this up soon. It's after 1, actually.
Sandra needs her nap.
No, I gotta go do my cardio.
I would just add to like what Chris was saying as well is like when you hit a PR on something that you're bad at, like that you traditionally think you're not good at, it's so much more satisfying than something that you think you're good at, just because it's like, you know, like, especially if there's something like where like you beat someone that you're like, man, I should, like if I beat Alex on something where I know Alex should beat me, like it's so satisfying. Like if I beat him on a 5K row, it's like, okay, great. Like I should be better. I'm a foot taller than he is. But if I beat him on something where it's like, you know, it doesn't happen much anymore, but like snatches and muscle ups, I'm like, yes, like I put so much work into this for so long and it's finally paying off. And like I sucked at that, and then I beat someone that I shouldn't have beat because I put more work in and I wanted it more that day. It is so much more satisfying than like Alex beating me on Fran, where it's like, he knows if we were to start together, it's like he could have one arm behind his back, he's gonna beat me. Like there's not a lot of satisfaction there. But if I were to beat him, there's so much more satisfaction. Like the reverse of the 5K, and it's awesome. Like there's not much better feeling than taking something you sucked at and like crushing it that day, and just knowing like hey, this is where I was a year ago and this is where I'm at now. Like, it's getting better, and I'm turning this weakness into a strength, which is awesome.
Yeah. Or like even if you're not like beating someone, it's like there's certain things like if I've even like within 30 seconds of someone within a workout that has like a million handstand push-ups and like a lot of handstand walking, I'm like, holy shit, I'm getting better. Like, so it's even like looking at your improvements, even if you're not winning too, right? So sometimes people get really beat up. They're like, oh, I just keep losing. Well, I'm like, well, damn, I was only 30 seconds off that person. Like before I was like 2 minutes. So there's improvement there. Yeah. So any more questions, guys, before we wrap this up? Good. Okay. Awesome. Thanks, guys, for listening in. I hope you got some insight. Again, if you're wanting to get a little bit more competitive or just have some questions, like just feel free to message any of the coaches. We're pretty spoiled at Cristini Athletics to have so many coaches who actually compete at such a high level. Again, just if you want to get into competing just for yourself, just to see where you can make improvements, again, it doesn't have to be at the elite level. It's just about making yourself better. That's all.
There's so many gyms where I would be considered a good athlete at, is the hilarious thing. Not like the guy that does this for fun and like tags along with his friends when they go to events.
Does Women's RX workouts so Sandra can train.
But most importantly, it's what Chris says all the time: keep fit and have fun. Is that what you usually say, Chris?
I think we all say that now. It's kind of the tagline I think we're all catching on to. It just goes. It just feels good. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Also, we want to know if anybody has feels that they're an expert or a semi-expert and is skilled in something that they could touch base with everybody and feels that they can, help our community, and you'd like to do like a half-an-hour talk. We're more than welcome to sharing you guys. Just feel free to send us a message or give us a call and let us know what you want to do and how you want to help our community.
Okay. Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
everybody. I'm out.
Ciao, guys. Hope you guys have a good day.